Like I look back and I think, okay, so our first issue that we grieved and dealt with was endometriosis. The second issue was, oh, no sperm and then low sperm. Oh, that's okay. We made embryos. And then we had another issue of, oh, we have some losses. What's happening? And then we deal with immune issues. So it's just felt like one step after another, one gut punch after another, because we deal with one thing and we get past it and we get some good news. And then you kind of hit another wall, and it's just amazing how much of a roller coaster it truly is. And you have no idea the end result because every time there was something new to tackle.
Welcome to My Fertility Podcast, Superhumans, the show that brings you expert insights, personal stories, and the latest in fertility care all in one place.
Whether you're starting your fertility journey, navigating challenges, or just exploring your options, we're here to empower you with knowledge, support, and hope.
Join us as we dive deep into topics that matter most, from IVF and fertility treatments to mental health and wellness.
I'm Dr. Mavis Garcia.
And I'm Dr. Wise. We're two of the fertility specialists at Markham Fertility Centre in Markham, Ontario, Canada. Think of us as your sisters in all things fertility. Let's demystify the world of fertility together. On today's episode of My Fertility Podcast, we are pleased to welcome Molly to the show. She describes her fertility journey as long, full of surprises, and a crazy roller coaster. Molly and her husband started trying to conceive in their mid to late 20s. Fast forward to a few years ago when they found themselves under the care of Dr. Garcia here at Markham Fertility Centre. At MFC, they did one retrieval, multiple transfers, and unfortunately had multiple losses, immune testing, and treatments that resulted in their beautiful rainbow baby, Nia, born in 2022. You can connect with Molly on Instagram at __ Molly_Edwards __. In this particular episode, we refer a lot to fertility care and resources in Northern Ontario. We are very happy to announce that as of August 2025, which is the time of this recording, Markham Fertility Centre is officially offering satellite monitoring in partnership with Nia Women's Health Network in Sudbury. To learn more about the services we offer, please visit markhamfertility.com/locations.
Welcome, Superhumans, and welcome, Molly. Thank you so much for joining us today. There is so much that we want to talk about. I think that this conversation is going to help a lot of people. So let's start right at the beginning. Tell us about you, about your family, your journey, and how is it that the universe collided so that you are having a conversation with the two of us on this Wednesday afternoon on My Fertility Podcast.
Oh, I feel like this could take a while. No, I'm just kidding. I am from Northern Ontario, so Sudbury. I grew up here. I met my husband when we were fairly young. We've been together for almost 20 years. We met each other when I was about maybe 18, 19. I was in school and we both loved children, spoke about having a family, and we just wanted to make sure we were kind of where we wanted to be in our careers, possibly have a house and have some more time go by. We got married 2014. And right around that time is when we felt comfortable attempting to start a family. And we thought nothing of it, as sometimes we are taught this could be easy and this was the right time. So after we got married, we decided to try. I had some very painful cycles and long cycles. It was sometimes hard to track. So after about 6 months, I thought there might be something more. We aren't getting pregnant. So we decided to look into what we have here in the north. We don't have a full fertility clinic here. So we went to OBGYN at the time. They had run some tests. And from what they could see, they thought I had advanced endometriosis. So we decided to take that step first. We went and did a laparoscopic surgery down in Toronto. And at the time, it wasn't as bad as they thought. It was actually a massive cyst. They removed that. They cleared out the slight endometriosis that was there. And he was very confident that this would now work. Came back home, healed. We tried another 6 months and it did not do anything. We then, as most people, you don't know where to start, especially in the north. And at the time, there wasn't a lot of these communities that there are now where you can find information very quickly. And there's a lot of people coming forward with their stories. And we didn't have all that. So we did slight Googling and attempting to find maybe somewhere down south. We had testing done on Brett here in the north. It came back as basically no sperm. So he then went to an endocrinologist here in Sudbury while we were being referred to a fertility clinic. They had put him on some medication. Actually, I believe it was HCG, thinking it would increase his sperm count. When we finally got to the fertility clinic, we were just hoping for anything, as we thought that was the only issue, was male factor at that time. So they did a test and he did have very low sperm, but several million. And we thought, this is okay, we can do a round. We did a round. It yielded us 3 embryos. I was young enough and it was our first round. We did not do any testing on those. Nothing resulted from those 3. We did a second round. Now, we did not have good results from that. We had 2 day 3s that we had decided at the time to go with as a day 3. Same thing, nothing. We felt there was more to it. We felt that we needed something more, maybe more testing, maybe a different protocol. I was learning everything as I was going, trying to find out everything I could about this. And it wasn't really reciprocated. In our egg retrievals, my 2 I had were excruciating. And so at the time, how I came upon Markham was I was trying to find a clinic that was open to new protocols and possibly some sort of immune testing. And that was the only clinic that kept coming up saying, you're pretty much put under for egg retrievals. You don't feel anything. And I thought, this is what has to happen because my first 2 were so traumatic. I actually didn't think I could do a 3rd retrieval. Then we got referred to Markham and we did our 3rd round at Markham Fertility. That yielded completely different results than the first 2. We had several embryos to work with. And along the way, of course, it was a lot of trial and error. This is where we had some losses. We decided to do a lot of the immune testing, some of the treatments. And then the very last genetically normal embryo, we went full in with a very, I guess I consider this a heavy immune protocol. And that was finally our successful pregnancy for Nia, who was born December 2022. I guess that's a long form in a way, but there's many things in between this that kind of occurred.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. And of course, congratulations on your little one, who's not so little anymore, I guess, at this point.
Crazy. She's little over 2.5 now.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
One thing that really struck me about your story, though, I have to say, is about endometriosis, actually, because I feel like it's become a lot more present in the, let's say, the cultural juggernaut, if I will, of fertility right now, where everyone's kind of talking about silent endo, quote unquote, the occult endometriosis and the effects on fertility. It struck me as a really interesting part of your story because that was like the first thing. And, you know, if I can say, you know, people thought, okay, it was the endo, that's the problem. If we fix that, then you're going to be okay. But that's not necessarily always the case, which is maybe a narrative that we don't necessarily hear right now so much in the world of fertility, or that, you know, you can have multiple issues, that endo is just one piece of this bigger puzzle. So How do you feel about kind of this increase in popularity or increase in sort of talk about endometriosis these days?
I love it only
You.
because when I first heard the doctor say this, I actually had no one to turn to. None of my friends have ever or knew of it if they did have it. Nobody I knew had it. I had never really heard of it on social media or just anywhere. And I was kind of concerned when they were explaining what endometriosis is. And I was like, well, this sounds very complicated and kind of like dangerous in a way. It's like growing out. I just couldn't understand it all.
Of course.
And this was now looking back, I guess, oh, a little, yeah, I guess 10 years ago. So I love it now because over the last 5 years, I see so much more talk about it. And my surgery changed my physical life. I didn't have the exact same cycles that were really, it was holding me back at work. It was holding me back in my social life. Every time I had my cycles, they were so excruciating. And I thought this just isn't normal and it holds you back from anything you want to do. So I love it. It was very confusing to me at the time, and I wish I would have known more. It's not quite as scary, I think, when you realize maybe how common it truly can be. It's just interesting to me that you really have no idea how your journey is going to go. At the beginning of this, we thought this is this one thing. It's okay. Yes, it takes some time, but we'll go through this surgery and that's it. It'll be ready. We'll be ready to go after this. And it's really not how it went at all. We don't even know if it still would have been okay without that surgery. That surgery did help my life after the fact for sure. But fertility wise, we really don't have any idea because we still had to do so many steps afterwards.
And on that note, what was it like going through the surgery and then finding out that the problem was a sperm in the first place?
That's the part that was almost devastating because, at the beginning of it, it was like, this is maybe a small thing. We'll go through surgery and then that's okay. We'll tackle that next step. And then we went through those feelings and all of that for the surgery. And it was almost in our heads, as in, it'll work after this. It's okay. We'll just have the surgery. I had to take maybe 5 or 6 weeks off of work. My healing journey from the surgery wasn't too bad. It was just, I would say, fairly painful for 2 weeks. After that, it was little things of not being able to carry heavy things and such. But we thought we tackled that. And then to find out there was no sperm, the testing they do here in the north, it's not specialized. So to the life labs, they just said there was no sperm. It could have still been, fairly low. But at a clinic like yours, you have such more tools to be able to see, is this a million or is this, 10 million or is this 60 million? Whereas we just got the news of no sperm. And then we crashed because it was like, well, now this is a totally different thing. And then it was almost a journey of panic and, okay, now what's the next steps? Well, we have to get a donor. That's really the only way to do this is to go through sperm donor. And it's tough because we navigated that ourselves. We didn't have anyone to turn to and figure out. At the time, we didn't know he still had sperm, but it was low. So to get that from a family doctor, they don't know what to say. They just get a report saying no sperm. So they're not able to really support us and they just refer us to the next step. But in those months of waiting to be picked up by a fertility clinic, we're stuck figuring this out and going through sperm donors of, oh my goodness, is this the one we should pick? Oh, is this what we should pick? And I remember sitting there thinking, this is not close to what we ever thought we were going to do. And my mom made a joke is, sometimes unfortunately someone that hasn't gone through it maybe not realize it, but she said, it's like you're picking your baby from a catalog. And I said, no, but that is how it feels right now because you're just going through lists and you don't know where to start. So that part was devastating. We almost had to deal with all these grief feelings and come to terms that we may have to have this donor. And then we get our first first appointment, and we go through all of our testing, and they come back and go, yeah, it's low, but this is totally doable with IVF. And we looked at each other and we both burst out crying because it was all of a sudden a chance. It wasn't, oh no, we have to have a sperm donor. It was, wait a minute, we have low sperm, so we can still attempt to make embryos. It is such a roller coaster.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, this is not to blame anyone. As you mentioned, just resources in the north are a bit limited, and physicians are doing the best that they can with the resources that they have. You did have painful periods, you did have cysts, you did have endometriosis. So you maybe did require surgery that improved your quality of life. I mean, I completely get that your doctors were doing the best they could with those situations that they had. I'm just speaking more broadly because now it's not the year, I don't know, I think this is 2015, 2016 that this was happening. So now we're in 2025, and I just want to say things are a little bit better. And I think one of the things that I get from this conversation is, number one, anytime that a couple is having infertility, it's very important to look at both partners. And I said that all the time. There are still patients who come to me who is like, but I had a cyst, but I have PCOS, but I had this problem. Therefore, it has to be me. We have to deal with this thing. I don't want to bother my partner. I'm the one that has the pain. I'm the one who can't get pregnant. I'm the one who's having irregular periods or heavy periods. And I'm like, yes, I know these problems exist. We're not going to ignore them, but we really need to look at all the pieces before we decide where we're going to tackle or where we're going to start with. So that's number one. The second thing I would say is that now with virtual care, I assume that back then you had to drive all the way to Scarborough for your first appointment. So
That's
now
right.
with virtual care, somebody that was in the exact same situation where you are, they can be referred to a clinic, of course, Markham Fertility Centre, but you could be referred to any clinic, and then there are virtual appointments. Like here at Markham Fertility Centre, we do virtual appointments. Even if we cannot do a semen analysis right away, but we can talk to patients fairly quickly and get the ball rolling in terms of that information, and hopefully avoiding that situation where you're like looking at sperm donors completely on your own. Because if you had a chance to talk to a fertility specialist, even if you didn't have that good news of there is sperm, a fertility specialist would have been able to say, these are all the options. We can maybe find sperm. We can do ICSI. We can do, all kinds of things. And the last thing I would say also is, this is one of the reasons that we do the podcast. For example, we have an episode on sperm donors. Not that you needed one, but I think it's so important for resources to be available to people, because somebody like you in Sudbury, you get a referral, you need to drive for 7 hours to meet a doctor for the first time, to then come back and do tests, to then have that appointment, and then in the meantime, there is that black space. I remember when I started practicing back in 2012, I felt that black space where I could not see the patients. They had devastating news and I couldn't get to them quickly enough. And I think this is one of the reasons I was so motivated to do the podcast and get on Instagram, because I want people to have information even when I'm not there.
Another thing that I'd really love to highlight from what you said, Molly, is that, I always tell people like a little bit of sperm versus zero sperm are miles apart. And even when somebody does have a semen analysis with zero sperm, it does not mean that it's always going to be zero sperm. There may very well be sperm in the testicle. And so I always tell people like a semen analysis is just like one snapshot in time. We're going to repeat the sperm test. We're going to have another look. There's other things that can be done. And so if anyone is listening to this and they've just got news about a semen analysis, let's say that where there's no sperm and they're told that there's no sperm, does not mean that it's the end of that particular pathway, right? It's really an important thing just to speak with a fertility physician, basically, because there may be explanations, options to consider from there.
I agree with that, because looking back on even all three of our rounds, we did 3 retrievals. And before that, we thought there was probably no hope. all of a sudden we do 3 retrievals. And actually, even though it was lower sperm, we actually had really good fertilization rates every time. It's really unknown in every round. In our case, I always say this, all 3 of our rounds yielded completely different results. We went from having 2 fairly graded embryos and 1 poor to 2 day 3s to our 3rd round having 6 embryos. So it's just wild, even though we had, at one point thinking no sperm or even the low sperm, every round is completely different.
Yeah, that's another very, very good point for sure. It merits repeating for sure how different rounds can be, even when you feel like the things that are going into the recipe can be so similar.
Like I look back and I think, okay, so our first issue that we grieved and dealt with was an endometriosis. The second issue was, no sperm and then low sperm. Oh, that's okay. We made embryos. And then we had another issue of, we have some losses. What's happening? And then we deal with immune issues. So it's just felt like one step after another, one gut punch after another, because we deal with one thing and we get past it and we get some good news. And then you kind of hit another wall, and it's just amazing how much of a roller coaster it truly is. And you have no idea the end result because every time there was something new to tackle.
Now, somebody who is listening to this podcast, who is maybe more at the start of their journey, might be listening and think to themselves, okay, so they found a thing and then they tried to fix it. Then they found a different thing and then they tried to fix that. Then they found a different thing. They tried to fix that. So if I'm at the start of my fertility journey, maybe I should try and do all the testing for all the things right at the beginning. What's your take on that?
It's tough because everyone is also so different. We all have such different issues. And I thought I knew the IVF world and infertility, but looking back, I knew nothing. There is so many reasons why it could fail. So I think that's tough. You do want to, in a sense, jump ahead and do as much testing as you can that might be available to you at your fingertips that may not be so invasive, I guess. It's very tough. I do think maybe we could do some of the basic tests, maybe what is your AMH showing? What is the sperm count showing? Have you had a loss? Have you ever been pregnant naturally? I think some of those are great to tackle. I think these are things that can maybe be done, through a blood test, through a semen analysis, and just maybe a questionnaire about your previous years. But when it comes to wanting to, I see it all the time. They haven't really done a transfer yet. And people are, should I do all of this immune testing? I should do all this right now. And that way I know. And I understand that. I'm the first one to understand it. You just want to be prepared and you want everything to go right, but I don't know the statistics, but I just feel like to do all of this extra work and so much money and time and more appointments where maybe a majority does come back for patients that say, there's no immune issues. It could be something completely different. That's where it's tough. It's tough to draw the line of what should all be done ahead of even one transfer. There's a fine line, but I do think we should possibly take as much as we can into consideration if it's maybe not a long route to take in a ton of money beforehand.
Exactly. I have this conversation with patients all the time because, like you, I get it. Nobody wants to go through the roller coaster. Nobody wants to go through that pain. But reality is, as physicians, I always tell patients, I want a baby in your arms with the least amount of cost and the least amount of time and the least amount of interventions for you. So if I had been your doctor back in the day and there was a lot of sperm, I wouldn't have said IVF. I would have said IUI. And maybe that wouldn't have worked. And then you had to do IVF, and then you had to do ICSI, and then you had to do PGT, and then you had to do immune. But at the time, if you had open tubes and there was a lot of sperm present and you're relatively young and you have normal AMH level, the right answer would be let's do some IUI, because that can put a baby in your arms with the least amount of cost and the least amount of interventions for you. So that is the balance. You're right, it's a line, and that is the balance that we are always walking with patients between doing too much too soon and increasing the cost, the complexity, the interventions, the risk, but at the same time, not letting it go too far. Like in the same way, we don't want to do 10 IUIs before we do IVF. We don't want to, do 6 embryo transfers of diploid embryos before we look into autoimmune issues and things like that. So it is definitely a line. And I'm glad for somebody who has been through it and who have been through all of it. It's nice to see you reflect back and say, yeah, no, I get why it wasn't all done on day one from the
That's
very
right.
beginning.
And I do believe in that. I look back in our first round, we had nothing else to go on, and there was sperm, and we did make some embryos, and we have nothing else to go on. We didn't do any of the PGT testing. We had nothing else to go on. And then the second round was kind of just a bust. So, once we got to Markham, and then it was, okay, now we're on a third round, and I don't think we can do a fourth round. So then it was more about, now what can we do to get more answers? And that's where we came into, okay, well, it's definitely time to test the embryos because we need to see if this is what the issue is or not. And then we also decided to do an ERA because we felt we kind of had to do everything to get any answers we could before going through any of the embryos. We did get 6 embryos, but we tested 4 because we had transferred 2 as a fresh, so we would never know what those were. So we had 4 tested. 3 of those came back normal. The 4th was a low-level mosaic. We knew we had 3 tries to go with. So at that point, it was, okay, now we're going to do everything we can to do all the testing to get answers before, because I don't think we could do a 4th. But prior, yes, it's a lot of trial and error, and that's the hard part of it all. It's different for everyone, and the trial and error is not easy. It's trying to find what's going to work for this body and this embryo, and it's so hard to navigate that. But once you find that recipe that works, then we're okay.
This is such a super incredibly important point, because it's always this ongoing conversation. I think, Dr. Garcia, at some point, you always talk about how you're walking the path with the patient. And it's absolutely true that patient preferences, patient expectations, finances are really, really important pieces of the puzzle. And it's always this constant, ongoing conversation about where you're at, where partner's at, where you guys are at together, and determining, okay, what are we going to do? I've had many patients come to me and say, hey, I just want to do everything. I want to do all the testing. Like, okay, let's take a step back here and let's talk about what that really means. Still constantly trying to figure out and trying to revise and trying to think about how I'm having that conversation with patients.
And I think it's probably difficult as a physician, I would imagine, because now all of us patients have all these groups, all these support things, all of these success stories online. And then that's kind of how we start to learn. And we're like, oh, well, it worked fine for this. So now I'm going to go see my doctor and say this, because that's probably what's going to work for me. And I see that I started this journey when these groups started to come about and more people were open about discussing their journeys and what their doctors do and what medications. And it's tough. That's how we learn too. But that is very overwhelming because we don't get to see the everyday things that you doctors get to see every day and know more than us. But it must be difficult. I don't know if Dr. Garcia remembers, but I do, because come the third round, I was desperate of, okay, what are we going to do now? And how are we going to make this work? And I remember finding out about all the different protocols that we can do. And I remember my first appointment with her, I said, I would really like to do retrieval, and I think it's going to work for me. And I just think it's this. And I really think we should test, but I would really like to do a fresh transfer because I've never done a fresh transfer, and that might work. And I had like all these bulletins because I was like, okay, this is it. And I remember her going, you know a lot. Who have you been talking to? And she goes, I do actually agree with what you're saying right now. And I felt like, okay, someone's on board with me. I think we can switch up this whole protocol and we might know something now. But it is hard. We get a lot of information and we want it to work. And all these groups are saying, have you tried this? And some of the patients don't even know what half of that means, but they feel like, oh, well, this person who had success, who had a very long journey, is saying this. So I'm going to go to my doctor with all of these things. It's difficult. We're learning as we go too, as patients, and as your journey gets longer, and you do have those trial and errors, you learn so much about your body and what's and what doesn't for each cycle.
I do remember that conversation, actually. For the most part, I actually kind of love it. The patients like you come like that prepared. I think the problem comes, like in your case, you're right. You said all of these things, and I completely agree for your situation that it was a great plan. But I think the problem is, like, let's say I have somebody sometimes that they have a really high AMH level and they want to do like a fresh transfer. And then I have to say, well, that's not appropriate because your estrogen level is going to go up. And if I want to do a fresh transfer, I have to give you less medications. That means let's not get 20X anymore. Now we're going to get 3. Is that going to be okay? Now we're going to compromise making 6 embryos for that fresh transfer, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And a lot of patients go, thank you. That makes sense. That's why it doesn't apply to me. But a lot of times, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they go, no, but in that Susie's, on my Facebook group, it worked for her and I want to do the same thing. And I think that's when it gets tricky. I think it's great to be an active participant in your care. It's great to talk to other people. And this is one of the reasons we have people on the podcast too, because I want my patients to hear stories and be able to relate. As long as you can come back to your doctor and say, this is what I heard, this is what I think we should do, or this is what I want to do. And then you listen to the expertise of your doctor, and they can actually explain why that protocol is perfect for you, like it was in your case. You actually nailed it. Or why it's not perfect for you for situations or specific conditions that you might not appreciate, because that's why we do the medicine and the study and the reading and things like that. So I think it's great when it works well, and like it did for us. It just gets more difficult when people are very stuck on these ideas that you hear in the groups and they're not willing to understand the nuance.
And that everything has a cost, not just financial, but can be medical, right? I remember I had a conversation with a patient. This was recent. She's like, I think I might have endometriosis. I said, okay, we can do XYZ, explore endometriosis. We can try and do a protocol in this way because this is what we would often do with patients with endometriosis. And she's like, well, but I really want to do this protocol for the transfer. And it's like, well, if we do this protocol, we know that it might actually be not good if you really do have endometriosis. So we kind of had to decide, are we going to go with this idea of trying a different protocol, or are we going to go with this idea of maybe kind of trying something geared towards endometriosis? And so everything has pros and cons as well. There are often trade-offs when it comes to thinking about things. That's also a really tricky conversation too.
And I do have another question for you, Molly. You mentioned that you were at a different clinic and you wanted to do some research and switch clinics because of the pain with the retrieval, and you wanted the immune testing and something a little bit more advanced. I hear that all the time, and I know patients really struggle with that decision to switch clinics, usually for really good reasons. What was that like for you, and what advice would you give to somebody who is struggling with switching clinics?
Oh, it was hard only because you don't know the right way. Of course, we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know, should we just attempt another one? Was it a fluke? Was it not? And you're already comfortable in, well, for most of us, unless something big has happened, you're already comfortable in your clinic. They've already done a lot of the tests. They know your previous round. There's so much to it. So you can kind of get very set in the ways and just keep going of cycle after cycle for some. For us, it was a matter of I really felt I wanted to try something different. I felt, okay, well, there's my AMH seems to be okay. And now that we have sperm, and there's got to be a little more to it here. And as I got to know more, I just felt we need more. And the clinic wasn't really necessarily on board with that. That's when they thought, well, we should probably just do another round the same way that each time you can get different results. And that was kind of the breaking point. It was, no, I need to just do something for ourselves in this moment and advocate. And I feel we need to do something more. I knew I also just couldn't go through another egg retrieval the same way. So those were the deciding factors of, I know it's going to be hard to start over new somewhere, but we need to do it. And I need to get that second opinion, and I don't want to have any regrets. And I felt that was the time to do it. We could only do one more round. If I could have done 3 more rounds, it may have been different, but I knew we could probably only do one more. And I felt it's time to do this now. I had already heard great things about Markham Fertility, and I thought this feels like they're open to new things, and I need someone to be on my side for this and validate maybe we should try something different. So for someone that's thinking about it, it is very difficult. But if you feel you're not getting somewhere, or maybe your feelings aren't validated in a way, you're running out of resources and money, having a second opinion, I don't really think you can go wrong in a way. That's just how I feel. At least attempt it and hope for the best at that point, that something different is going to change than the other rounds that you've done at your current clinic.
And I need to know, how was your retrieval with anesthesia? Because that actually I don't remember.
It was amazing. And I remember waking up and I was shocked that I was truly out of it. Actually, I believe it was, I almost 90%, it was Dr. Vero that did the retrieval. And I remember beforehand, I think it was days before, and I told you numerous times how terrified I was. And you were reassuring me over and over that, no, we will make you comfortable. You really won't be able to feel this and you won't remember it. But I remember being told that at my previous clinic that, oh, we'll up the medications, it'll be okay. And it really wasn't. So I remember shaking beforehand. And I remember them counting, and I don't remember much past 2 or 3. I must have been totally asleep by then. I woke up to, nurses helping me get dressed. And I remember asking the anesthesiologist, I think Brett told me, my husband, he said, you kept asking him, do you have Facebook? We should be friends, because that was the best I've ever had. The greatest nap I've ever had. And I was just going on and on. So clearly it was a great time. And honestly, I don't remember it. I was in no pain. And I finally felt like, yes, this was the one I was comfortable. And it was amazing. I wasn't traumatized. And I was like, this is what I feel they should all be. Because I mean, I know each retrieval can be different for everybody, but my first 2, when I say traumatic, like they were so painful, we had to stop midway through because I just couldn't see us continuing. And I don't think anyone should go through that. It's so hard. And I don't want that to impact someone's decision on another round or not, because that's where I was at. I told Brett, I can't do a 3rd retrieval. No matter how bad we want this, I can't do that. So I just feel like there is hope. Sometimes we do have to revisit to a different clinic that has a different protocol for retrieval.
And not everybody needs it, to be fair. I think maybe because of the endometriosis, some people do fine with the regular conscious sedation medications, but you're absolutely right. There are patients who do not. And sometimes we get a lot of referrals, even from physicians and other clinics saying, I can't make her comfortable. I cannot make her comfortable. Please do IVF in my patient because I cannot make her comfortable. And that's where having anesthesiologists come to our clinic, it's amazing. It's a huge cost for us, but we are really proud of it because it does provide such a good experience. I never said pain-free because I'm not in my patient's body, so I don't want to say 100% pain-free, but for the most part, it's a lot more comfortable. Usually, it's the experience that you're describing. They go to sleep, they wake up, and it's done.
It was amazing. And to be honest, before I came to Markham, once I had those traumatic retrievals, I understood that in Ontario or in Canada, we couldn't really have any more sedation. And we started considering going across the border for another retrieval because we knew that they were able. And so that's where we were at. And I thought that's the only way I can do this until somebody said, well, no, there is a clinic that does this. Once they said that, I was blown away. I was like, if there is one here, I will absolutely go to it. But sometimes we don't know better. I understood that there wasn't any clinics. This was kind of the norm medication that all clinics use. So I was ecstatic. So if anybody is going through just that traumatic retrieval or is very, very, very painful and you're thinking that you cannot do that again, my third round, I absolutely can say I had zero pain. My recovery was good, but even in the actual retrieval, I had no pain. I do not remember one thing about that, which was completely different from my first two. I was wide awake. And I know they say, you can't drive after. I probably could have. I didn't. Brett drove me, but I was wide awake. So there is a very big difference in retrievals.
Absolutely. It's one of the things that I love about working here. It's like doing that retrieval on patients like you who going into it thinking this is going to be terrible. And I can really reassure them. Like, I don't know how many eggs we're going to get. I don't know how many embryos, but I can tell you, you're going to be asleep. I can tell you.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then they wake up and they're like, I can't believe this. It's awesome.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Yeah. And, listen, both Dr. Garcia and I have trained at other clinics. We have done retrievals on patients with these different conscious sedation and different sedation medications. Many patients do okay. I would say for sure the majority of patients are okay going through a retrieval with I'll call it like the standard medications. But there is absolutely a subgroup of patients who it's like night and day for them for a variety of different reasons. There is no reason why the painful retrieval should stop somebody from doing another retrieval. Full stop, period. Yeah, I'm glad you had a good experience in that third retrieval.
So, Molly, what kept you going? Because it was quite a lot, from a surgery to thinking you need a donor sperm to two very painful traumatic retrievals. Even when you came here, you had a great experience with the retrieval, but your first transfer wasn't successful. Your second, I'll let you tell that story, but it wasn't like you walked through the doors MFC and everything was perfect right away. What kept you going through all of that? And even now, when you were working with me, you always had such a positive attitude. You always were like, yeah, we'll do the next thing and we'll do the next thing and we'll do the next thing. So what was it? And can I bottle it up and give it to all the patients?
I know it's sometimes I don't know, honestly. With IVF is a marathon of hope, uncertainty, resilience. It's everything. That coming to Markham, I must say, I did have a new boost of energy and a new thought process. Something changed. I do think it helped with that third round and getting much better results. I think I just became a little more positive, which is hard. It's very hard to constantly tell yourself, be a little more positive because there's so many things that happen. But I do think it was that third round, I had to change my thinking and I thought, this is it. So we need to just go full force, tackle everything. And it was loss after loss at Markham. It was 3 in a row. So for me, I knew there was something more we could continue. I didn't feel completely done. I knew I wasn't ready to throw in the towel yet. I think everyone's different and they know how much they can handle and what they can't. For me personally, I just felt I wasn't quite there yet. Once we had those embryos, it was like almost a fight to find what could work. I knew we hadn't hit everything we could do with the protocol quite yet. It was still trial and error. And so I think it's just honestly, I didn't have time to stop. I knew it was more just keep going, keep going, keep going. And that's not for everyone. I know people need time to step away and grieve and take their time in these processes of good news, bad news. For me, it was just next step, next step, next step. It did give me a little bit more hope just continuing to talk to you and knowing we weren't out of options yet. There was still always something else we could do. We were trying to do the checklist of, okay, let's test the embryos. Okay, let's do the ERA. Let's do the immune testing and the immune treatments part of it. And then it was, let's go full in for a really heavy clotting immune protocol for this transfer. So I think it's just that I knew there was a little more each step we could still do. And I wasn't 100% in my heart, in my gut. I wasn't ready to stop yet. It could have been different had we had the exact same protocol for each transfer and I knew there was nothing more we could do. I may have felt different, but I, in my gut, wasn't really ready to stop. And I knew we still had the one normal, which was Nia, and the one low-level mosaic. So it's different for everyone, but I wasn't ready yet to stop that journey.
I think you knew Nia was there. She was waiting.
In a way, I feel that. I just felt at some point this has to work. I feel like we've done everything that we can think of to cross off the list. We are in an age where we are fortunate. There are so many options that I felt in one way or another we would have a family. I didn't know what that was going to look like through that process, whether maybe we did have to do a surrogate, maybe we would have to do, I don't know, donor embryos. I didn't know what it looked like, but I just knew we would somehow have it, and I wasn't ready to give that up yet.
I think what I'm really hearing is that it's so important to know yourself and to have those check-ins with yourself, it sounds like, and then also with your partner, both of you separately, then also together, let's say, to really sort of do that soul searching. If somebody is going through the thick of it, right? They're on that roller coaster, the ups, downs. How do you even start to think about those things, whether you're done or not done, or how far you want to go? How did you do it to sort of be able to come to those conclusions that you weren't done yet?
Yeah, of course, it was decision for Brett and I. Luckily, we were both on the same page for this. We did check in with each other frequently. I mean, communication is really important when you're going through this with a partner. Everyone will have different coping mechanisms and ways they deal with grief or bad news or good news. So for us, we did check in and we were fortunate. We both felt the same way that we could continue on together. I don't think I may have been able to do this by myself. I do think having that support of Brett and bouncing ideas off of each other and just knowing that we had each other, okay, we're going to keep doing this next step. And it felt like we were both on the same page. So maybe that motivated me a bit more to continue on. We both just felt at the same time, we're still going to do this.
I have to say, it was a full circle moment for me when I was able to come to Sudbury and meet Nia. We met at the hospital lobby because I had another patient who had just given birth, who is your friend.
That's right.
So I went to see my other patient and her baby, and you were at work and you left work. And it was so amazing to see you all together and have that moment. So thank you so much for that. It was very, very special.
It's wild. We wouldn't have missed it. It is full circle, not just for me, but like you said, for my friend. It's wild looking back on my journey, her journey, how we met, how I had asked her, please, I know you're at your wit's end, but I'm just telling you, we have to try to get you to Markham because you can't quit without at least seeing Dr. Garcia. And she was almost at her wit's ends too. So it was so full circle, her having the birth of her son, me being able to bring my daughter to see you, Yeah, lots of tears on her end, my end, your end. Nia won't understand that yet, the significance of that full circle and how we dreamt of those moments. She will one day, and she still plays with her little doctor kit she has. Every day she's running around with her doctor kit and going, doctor, doctor. And we joke, we say, maybe one day you will be a Dr. Garcia. Would that be something? One day
Aww.
you would be, making other patients' dreams come true. When you were frozen one day in the clinics, it's wild. When you're in the thick of it, you just don't think some of these moments are possible. And I understand that sometimes we don't always have the happy endings. We see a lot of things on social media, sometimes of all the things that did work, and it doesn't always go that way. And it's hard in the middle of it to realize, are you going to be okay if it doesn't? I mean, it's hard, but these full circle moments at the end when it does work, it's very rewarding to know every decision we made, it was okay. We did that. We went through that and we made the right decision. I knew at some point we were going to have Nia, I guess.
I love people like you and Renee Higgins from Sudbury as well.
Yes.
And I also met Noel when I was there. All of you have shared your story so selfishly, because that's the way I look at it. Of course, I was the doctor that helped them, did the embryo transfer and all the things, but they wouldn't have even come to me if it hadn't been for you guys being open and sharing the story and not keeping it to yourself in some little lock, like this is my secret and nobody's allowed to know it. I think it's such a selfless thing to share the story, and it just helps so many people. This is a very concrete example of your friend, but I have lots of people who come and they're like, I heard about this through Instagram and this person that they'll never know that they're here because of them. But it does create a ripple effect of giving people information, giving people hope. I'm sure there is somebody who's going to listen to the podcast who's going to be like, wait, I don't have to be in pain? Like, wait a minute. You mean I could do a retrieval without being traumatized?
I do appreciate you saying that you love that we all share our stories. I think with all of us, we've had somehow just kind of a long, complicated journey. And within that, we now have this fire under us of wanting to say as much as we can, if it even helps one couple, one woman, one man, anyone, because I just wish I knew and had some resources at the beginning of this journey that weren't really around. I don't know if it would have saved us time or money or anything, but I just want to empower them as much as what we can with our journey and letting them know every part of it that you're feeling is normal. It's not just you feeling this way, and it's not just you going through this. There are thousands of us, unfortunately, and it's so much. I remember when we started, I still cannot give myself medication. My husband has to give it to me. And there were times I was so terrified of these needles. He would like almost chase me around the house. Like, it's time. It's time. Like, this is the timing. We have to do this. And I kept saying like 2 more minutes, 2 more minutes. It's just all those little things, the medications that you might be terrified of, or they make you feel horrible, or you have all these side effects from them. And then there's all the physical procedures you go through, and you have so many side effects and so many feelings. And I just want them to know they are not the only ones that are feeling like this. And it's very validated that you have all of these emotions, and it is up and down. You get good news, and then you get bad news, and then you get good news, and then you get bad news. And it's such a journey. So if we can help anyone feel less isolated or less triggered by things in any way, I just want to make sure they know they're not alone. And this can be a long road, but there is absolutely hope. As many of us here in Sudbury that went through these long journeys, we did have a happy ending. We were the lucky ones. But we did do 7, 8 years of this nonstop. That's what fuels us. We want to empower everyone we can, and just know there's so many options out there and you're not alone. That makes us feel so much better if we can help someone.
I think that's actually a beautiful conclusion to this episode.
Thank you so much, Molly.
Oh my gosh. Of course. Of course. Always a pleasure.
And that's a wrap for today, Superhumans.
If you're looking to connect, get social with us. Follow us on YouTube and Instagram at My Fertility Podcast or visit us online at markhamfertility.com. And don't forget, follow, subscribe, and share your favorite episode.
Thanks for listening to My Fertility Podcast and for being a vital part of our community. We know you've got this.
We're signing off until next Tuesday.
If you found this episode of My Fertility Podcast helpful, please take a moment to head over to the review section and leave us your thoughts. Your reviews and comments are incredibly valuable to us and help guide future episodes. We also welcome you to direct your questions to info@myfertilitypodcast.com.
My Fertility Podcast is produced by Rabbit Media Inc. in conjunction with Dr. Garcia and Dr. Weiss.
Music from Mixkit, Life is a Dream by Michael Ramir C.
My Fertility Podcast is not intended to replace any type or variation thereof professional medical, health, or legal advice, nor should the content be taken as medical advice. Please contact your primary healthcare professional regarding any medical questions you may have. The information presented in this podcast is based on the knowledge and understanding of the host at the time of recording. Medical knowledge is constantly evolving, and new research may change the understanding of health-related topics. While we strive to provide accurate and up-to-date information, we do not guarantee the completeness, accuracy, or timeliness of the content. The views expressed in this podcast by guests are not those of the host or the management. This podcast is not intended to impose any type of discrimination. My Fertility Podcast and its management are not responsible for any losses, damages, or liabilities that may arise from the use of this podcast.